I'm Steve Roberts in the Crossville, Tennessee area, the Cumberland Plateau area of the Appalachian Mountains in East Tennessee or Middle Tennessee. We sometimes call it the Middle East, jokingly. Uh, I'm the president of Cumberland Mycological Society, mushroom club based here in the area. And I have a guest with me today, Jay Justice, who has been studying mushrooms for quite a long time, over 40 years actually. And Jay knows quite a bit about Amanitas, and he has just co-authored a book with Britt Bunyard entitled Amanitas of North America. And we're going to talk just a little bit about that book and also show some representations of a few specimens of Amanitas from the different sections. So Jay, good to have you here. What got you interested in Amanitas?
Well, they're very, there's a lots of them in the southeast area of the United States, and they were one of the first large showy mushrooms that I started seeing when I started studying mushrooms many years ago. So it was hard to avoid them, and they would come up and they would just, it was a challenge to identify them, but they're just so many of them, and they're just so large and showy. So it's
very plentiful at times after
yes,
big rains. Like today,
absolutely.
I was out, and here we are in the middle of August, and they were everywhere. So, and they're beautiful. Many of them very showy. They really get your attention. Jay, by the way, he has a BA in chemistry, or Bachelor of Science, I guess, in chemistry.
It's a
whatever.
BS, yes.
Yes, okay. And a master's in natural sciences, and he had a career in epidemiology in Arkansas, working for the state. And all that time he's been studying mushrooms. Like I say, been doing it over 40 years. So it's a very long time, and he's been to forays all over the country and workshops. He's spoken at a lot of those, so he's well respected in the mushroom circles, and he also is very good with southern mushroom identification. Well, he's good with mushrooms all over, but especially the South. So probably not many who are quite at Jay's level, because he's been doing it so long and he has studied it diligently. So he's very qualified to talk about the topic of Amanitas, and also was very qualified to write this great book. And one of the things that is great for someone like me who's constantly wanting to learn more about mushrooms is having a book of just that one family of mushrooms or one genus or whatever. And I remember, I think the first book that came out that I remember was the bolete book. I call it the North American Boletes by Bassett and Rudy. And then later they came out with the Boletes of Eastern North America, with some updated names and things. So if you're just in the East, that's very handy. And then also by the same authors, the milk mushrooms, which is the Lactarius and the Lactifluus, and the wax cap mushrooms, which is like the Hygrophorus and the Hygrossebe and the Humidicutus, those along those lines. And then Tricholomas, more of a fall mushroom, at least here in the Eastern United States. And so now, the nice thing about that is when you're trying to figure out what mushrooms you have, if you go to like a regional field guide, you might only have 10 or 15 species of a particular group or genus. But when you can go, if you say you have a Lactarius or a bolete, or in this case you have an Amanita, now we have a book. I guess this is the first book, isn't it, Jay, on Amanitas?
Well, actually, Dave Jenkins published one, Amanitas of North America, back in, when was it? Maybe late 70s or something. But it's the names are outdated now and everything. And we think the pictures in our book are much better than the ones that he had in his book. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Printing techniques have improved a lot since then, so we feel like our pictures are very showy in our book. So.
His book was more technical too, wasn't it?
Uh, yes, it was. It didn't have a lot of the interesting information about Amanitas that's in the front of our book, the current
Right.
book.
Okay, sure. And one of the things that when I first, I've only had my copy here for a couple of weeks, so I haven't had a chance to really read through it thoroughly, but I have had a chance to go over it quite a bit and look up some mushrooms that I found, and it's worked really well for that. But our mushroom club has a species list, and I, for a master's list of all the different species we've identified at all the different parks that we go to. And on the Amanitas, I was just curious, so I looked each one up and saw which ones are in this book, and I was really pleased to find that every species but one of them was in this book. So that doesn't mean that every single Amanita that we find, we can put a name to it, but for the ones that we were able to put a name to it, they're pretty much almost all of them in the book. And so that's really handy for someone who is working on Amanitas to know that there's a good chance they're going to be in that book there, in that work. Okay. Jay, how many species of Amanita are there in the world, or in North America, if you know that?
In North America, according to the guru of Amanitas, Rod Tullis, who has a wonderful website there of a lot of information about Amanitas, probably close to maybe 960 or so, I think, currently known in North America.
Okay. And how many are in this book?
A little bit over 100, maybe like 120,
okay.
I think.
Okay, so pretty good representation. You're not going to find every one in the book, obviously.
Right.
Yep. But I guess that's probably par for the course for the other books too. When you get into boletes and things like that, it's probably, I would imagine, Lactarius book, probably a similar percentage, would you say, or do you know, of books of the specimens or species that are in the book that
well, the other books that you showed earlier, the other field guides you showed earlier probably have a higher representation of the species known in North America, but it would be unwilling to try to publish a book with 963 species, and some of them really don't have haven't been officially described. Some of them have alphanumeric labels, and even some in our book have what's called non-prob names, which are just provisional names. But we tried to provide a representation of both very common ones, the ones that are known, and a few exotic ones that may not be known, or excuse me, that may not be very common, but have some unusual features that just in case people run into them. And then we do give distributional information about where you might find them. The southeast part of North America, or the northeast part, or even we do discuss species that are west of the Rockies in California, Oregon, and the states out there. Right.
And one of the things that I first notice is the great photographs. And so like when you have a species there, you'll have a good description of it on one page with a photo, and then very often you'll have a very large different photo on another page. So that's very helpful, especially for the beginner that may rely a lot on pictures to help, steer them in the right direction before they really get into learning to use the descriptions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So starting out with kind of the layout of the book, let's see if I can pull up a screen here for the table of contents. So in the beginning of this book, through the first close to 80 pages, there's a lot of really good reading here about Amanitas, a lot of folklore and history, a little bit about edibility, poisonings, because in the Amanita, we know that that's where we find some of our deadly, probably responsible for most of the deaths in this country would be the Phalloides section of Amanitas. But looking over here on the second column, what's interesting to me is what interests me most is that, because I'm interested in going to identify the mushrooms. And so we see there are several different sections. So we have section Amanita, section Caesarea, section Vaginate, is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Vaginate, yeah.
Section Lepidella, section Amidella, section Phalloides, section Vallidae. And then you also cover some on the genus Limacella, which is not actually
Correct.
Amanita, but it's in the Amanitaceae.
Taceae, correct, yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show that because there are, we do have these different sections. And how would you suggest, Jay, is best for someone who is new, maybe, and they haven't really been into this very long, and but they find a mushroom and they say, yeah, this is an Amanita, I believe. What's the best way for them to use this book?
Well, if they can learn the features of the common features of the members of each section, then that would help. Then they could go in and just look at the species in that section using the book and see if there's something that maybe matches up with what they found. So
okay,
the main thing, yeah. So if they can learn the features, whether it has that saccade valve at the base, if it has a bulbous base, and if it has an annulus, and some of the features that many Amanitas have, if they can learn those, whether they're absent or present, then they can go in and maybe find a certain section that it looks like it might belong to, and then narrow down their possibilities of what it might be.
By the way, I didn't mention Jay I mentioned I'm in the Crossville, Tennessee area. Jay is in Alexandria, Arkansas, which is very close to Little Rock. So he's an Arkansas native, and that's where he currently resides. So we're doing Zoom meetings because, of course, we're in the middle of this COVID epidemic or pandemic. We would have, Jay would probably been here this weekend for a mushroom foray had we not had this pandemic. So we're learning to use Zoom and communicate in this form and fashion. So let's just go to that section, Phalloides. Phalloides, what is the section, Jay?
Phalloides, I think it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Phalloides.
So turn my lights down a little lower so we don't get that glare. So talk about what we have there, Jay.
Okay, well, obviously it's a young, not button stage anymore, but it's a young specimen of an Amanita, and we can see the convex cap on it. There aren't any warts on top of the cap. One thing about Amanita is that people should remember is that sometimes there are velar warts on top of the caps in other sections, but those can be washed off easily, sometimes by rain. But you know that the base of it's very bulbous. It bulges out. Yeah. And you may or may not be able to see that bulbous base is encapsulated or contained within a little, what looks like a little sac. Got away from you. Little sac like that, which is called a saccade valva. Yes. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, that's good. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And can you turn it sideways? We can. It has an annulus, and the annulus is still intact. Right. Meaning it hasn't detached yet from the edge of the cap to where we can see the gills.
Sure.
So, okay, so what we see is an Amanita, no velar warts, has a bulbous base, the saccade valva with an annulus. So those, and it's pure white. Yeah, it's pure white.
And in common names, the annulus would be the ring, and
correct.
That's so that partial veil that's covering the gills is going to fall down and cover that, stem, and it'd be the ring. Do all Amanitas have a partial veil?
Members of 6 of the 7 sections do, actually. Section Vaginate, most of the members, the majority of the members don't, but actually a few of them, it's been discovered, a few of them have a partial veil, but you don't see it. It goes away very quickly. It doesn't last long.
Yep. So this mushroom will get big, open up, and then it'll have the annulus or the ring on the stem. And this is one of the deadly poisonous ones that are a very common mushroom here in this area. I would say they're probably common all over the eastern United States, aren't they?
Yes, correct, Steve. Yes.
Yeah. And that is in section, once again, pronounce that for us.
Phalloidae, I believe.
Phalloid. Oh, you can't pronounce it either. So, okay, that's bad. Another one section will be in the section Lepidella, and you might tell us what you're seeing there. I have some younger specimens.
Okay. Members in that section tend to be very large. They can get very large, very big. They will have velar warts on top of the cap. They will have bulbous bases, but they will not have that saccate volva that we saw earlier. They'll have warts at the bottom of their stalk right there. Sometimes the way the warts, the color of the warts and the way that they're appear can be very helpful in identification. Some of these members in this section, the stalk can really go down into the soil. They can be eradicating, meaning they can really go down deep. And that's why it's important if you're going to study the members of the genus Amanita to try to dig up the entire fruiting body, right, with an implement like that. Yes, works good to dig them up because there are features at the bottom of the stalk that can be helpful in correct identification to the species.
Yeah, and here's one that has the caps come off. Sometimes it is hard to transport them, but you can really see the annulus, and actually this one gives us what, a double annulus, doesn't it?
Yes.
Double ring. Yeah. This one is the subcochrae or the cochrae, isn't it?
I believe it's subcochrae, yes.
Yep. Okay, and this one I believe we said was the abrupta, has that abrupt
flatten,
bulb.
yeah,
So,
flatten the top of the
right,
base.
so they're actually different mushrooms, but they're in the same, that section Lepidella.
Mm-hmm.
Lepidellas are usually more or less white too, aren't they?
Many of them are, but the ones that there's a couple of them, at least one in the deep south that's a chocolate brown color. So, but yeah.
Okay, and so I have some representations from the section Caesarea here, and here's a young one, and this one break off. We'll see if we can get it up there. Put it back together with some super glue. Haha. So what are we looking at here, Jay?
Those are what people call the American Caesar's mushroom. There's a mushroom in Europe called Amanita Caesarea, very highly prized, edible, very, very highly sought after. And for many years, the mycologists, when they studied our red cap mushrooms that look like it, they called it Amanita Caesarea. But microscopic examination and now DNA has shown that even though they may look like what they have in Europe, it's not the same thing. So we have lookalikes, but they're not the same thing as the true Caesar's mushroom, which can be found in Europe.
And they have a really big sac, don't they?
Yeah, they have an elongated.
Call that a vulva, wouldn't you?
Vulva, right? Have elongated vulva. They do have, as you see, this one that's opened up. It has an annulus, and they will have no warts on top of the cap. The little white specks there, or some, there probably were an insect is eating it or whatever. But yeah.
And so these are kind of along the lines of the Jacksonii, aren't they? Amanita.
Yeah, Jacksonii is one member in that group. Yes, for sure.
Okay, and like I say, these are highlighted there in Jay's book very nicely. Here's another from the pretty common right now. They're kind of out everywhere, but these are another from the same section. So which ones are we looking at there, Jay?
I think that's Banningiana that we're looking at.
Those are pretty common in the South?
Southeast, the East Coast, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how far north they go, but yeah.
So that's 2 sections, and now we have,
3 sections, actually.
I've already done 3 sections, okay?
Yeah, we did
Wow,
Lepidella.
we did, yeah, okay. And yeah, and here's a 4th one from a 4th section.
Okay. Right.
And
In
an older
Europe,
one.
right. In Europe, they have a Amanita they call the blusher. It's called Amanita rubescens. And it's called the blusher because if you scratch the stipe or the gills, they will turn a reddish brown color. It's been determined that we don't have the same European Amanita over here, but we have several that look like the Amanita rubescens. And you'll notice if you can hold that, the one in your right hand, yeah, turn it toward the camera.
This way?
Oh, actually, either one. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. People can see that it does have the velar warts on top of the cap like that. And the reason that the one on the left side of the screen has fewer warts is that the rain has probably washed them off.
Yeah, we
Anyway,
have had some rains, definitely.
they do have a bulbous base, but they don't have a saccate vulva at the base, and they do have the velar warts. They do have an annulus, and they do bruise that reddish brown color if you rough them up, or sometime with age they'll change that reddish brown color. So they're called American blushers, if you want to call it that way.
Right. So the European name is the Amanita rubescens, and I think the provisional name is Amera rubescens.
Well, yeah, actually, Rod's breaking that up into about 7 or 8 individual species.
So we don't have a clue which ones we have here. So, but it's a general group, maybe the Amera rubescens group. Yeah.
Yeah, people are still using that name, yes.
Yeah, okay. Till they get it sorted out.
Right.
And so which section are we in right now, Jay? Is this the Validei?
Yeah, Validei.
Validei,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
My pronunciation is not always perfect. And here's another one in that same section that the name is very similar. It looks a little similar, but it's whereas that one is the rubescens. This is the brunescens, isn't it? Right.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about that one is it's one of the Amanitas in that section, Validei, that the gills, if you break the gills, they actually have an odor that a lot of people describe as raw potatoes. Remember that, Steve? Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Several, yeah.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that odor.
So there's some Amanitas that have some interesting odors to them.
So which section are we in here? Is this section Amanita?
I don't think so. That's Flavorubens, isn't it?
I think so. Which section is that in?
That's in Validei.
Oh, that's also Validei. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
Not
is
sure if you.
Go
Not
ahead.
sure if you have any from section Amanita.
Okay. And then we have these here.
Right.
That don't have the annulus, the ring.
Right. Section Vaginata.
Yeah, and they do have a little bit of a saccate vulva, kind of elongated, aren't they?
Right. Well, I wouldn't say they're elongated. They're kind of abbreviated, but and you notice they do not have a bulbous base, just like the section Caesarea. Right. They're not as colorful usually. They don't have the bright reds, bright oranges. They're kind of more subdued with the browns, colorations.
Yeah, a little more drab.
Yep.
And they're kind of hard to put to species, aren't they, Jay?
Yeah, that's the largest section of those. I mean, that's of all the Amanitas, that has several hundred species in it, and it's difficult to really key them out just using the macroscopic properties. You really need to look at the size of the spores and sometimes actually go have them sequenced.
Right.
to really know with certainty which species you have.
Mm-hmm. So that gives us some representation of some of the different sections of the Amanitas in the book that Jay's co-authored, Amanitas of North America. I think that if you're a serious mushroom hunter, I mean, you can easily get a lot of money tied up in books. Your library can really grow. So it really depends on how far you want to take this. But, certainly, if you want to learn to identify Amanitas, there's just so much good reading in there, so much good writing, great descriptions. And also you can get the book directly from Jay. I'm sure he will be happy to sign it for you. He gave us a little, he may not write that much for you, but since he knows us, he wrote quite a bit. But I have his contact information there. I know this book is in the $50 range, so it's very reasonable. It is a hardback, a very durable book, and it's 380 pages or so, 340 pages. So it's just a really good book to add to your mushroom book library. So anyway, Justice@Aristotle.net. If you want to order one, just give Jay send him an email, and I'm sure he'll be happy to send one your way. Thanks, Jay, for being with us on this edition of Mushroom Book Reviews.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, take care, Jay.
All right.